Hello everyone, and welcome to our weekly World of Darkness news, in which we cover all news World of Darkness related. And this time it's going to be a little bit less Vampire the Masquerade focused, and it's going to be way more rave focused. We're going to talk a lot about Rave the Oblivion Afterlife, which is coming pretty soon. And we're going to have an interview with Eric from the team, who was a guest on our show before, but this time we have way more to talk about. We're going to also cover some other news. One of them is going to be the introduction of our development blogs. The very first one is available on our website right now. You might have seen it already on our social media. We shared it around, and we're going to talk about this and what's going to come in the future. And of course, World of Darkness stories, which we've teased on our socials this week, and what exactly is World of Darkness stories and what you will be able to get from that as a Vampire the Masquerade or Werewolf or Wraith fan, or in the future Changeling or Mage fan as well. We're going to talk about all of these things. So this is going to be a part of the news part of the show. But right after, we're going to show you the Let's Play of Rave the Oblivion Afterlife, the very first 15 minutes. So it's not going to be super spoilery. But if, of course, you want to avoid all of the spoilers from the game, this is going to be at the very end of the show. And for those of you who are watching this on YouTube, this is not going to be a part of this video, but it will be linked down below. So you will be able to see that. And people in the chat are inviting everyone in and saying hellos, and also saying when you're supposed to be teaching a class, but you assign them busy work so you can watch this show instead. Urban, I am not going to tell you that this is great because you should be teaching your class, but also thank you for being here with us. And yes, my hair color is messing with the green screen. It's getting more and more green, which is not visible on this camera, but it is. So I definitely need a dye. Because we get a La Sombra effect in there. But now, guys, I'm going to connect to Eric and see whether he's waiting for us, because I have a lot of things to ask him. And if you remember our past episode in which he was a guest, he's an awesome guest. He has a lot of things to share. And yeah, let's get ghosty. Wraithy. Is there such a thing as Wraithy? There should be. We should make it a thing. So let me join the meeting and see if he's here. Hello, Eric. Hi.
Hello again. Hi.
Oh, I can see you there, but you are, for some reason, moved a little bit on my screen, and I'm going to move you so everyone can see you properly. There we go. Hello, Eric.
Hello. Hi. Hi.
It's super nice to see you here again for the second time on our show. And for those people in the audience who were not able to catch the past episode, let's start with the basics. Could you introduce yourself to our community?
Yes, my name is Erik Odeldal. I'm the creative director and writer at Fast Travel Games. And right now we're making a game called Wraith the Oblivion Afterlife.
And Rave the Oblivion Afterlife has hit the news today because you shared the very first influencer Let's Plays, the little tidbits from the first chapters of the game, as well as some of the journalists were able to play the game for the first time, which resulted in some glowing reviews of the very beginning of the game. How do you feel after today?
Very, very good. I've been riding the wave all day. It's always scary showing the game. I have a feeling it's a really, really good game, but it's always great to actually get some confirmation that we've been doing the right thing.
Definitely, but I assume that Fast Travel Games, as much as there's a reason to celebrate, you are not resting because the release is coming pretty soon.
Yes, exactly. It's launching. Afterlife is launching on Oculus headsets on April 22nd, and on Steam on May 25th, and later also on PlayStation VR in 2021. So we're super busy fixing bugs and polishing and adding that last little thing to the game.
So, speaking of the game itself, I'm going to question you a little bit today about the gameplay in itself. And
Yes.
let's touch a little bit upon what a lot of these very early reviews, the first looks in the press talked about, which is the
Yep.
horror aspect of the game. Many reviews praise the approach to horror in Rave, the Oblivion Afterlife. But what exactly is this approach?
So what we decided early on that we wanted to build something that does not rely on jump scares or stuff like that, but instead build the mood slowly over time and basically hopefully eventually reaching a level where it feels really really scary all the time. So it's something that is focusing a lot on story and just generating a mood, a constant mood of being, yeah, being a wraith, being in the shadowlands and not necessarily always understanding what's going on.
Definitely. And this also, I think, improves the accessibility of the game because the jump scares in general are just not very pleasant, even in video
No.
games on PC, but on VR it has to be much worse.
Yes. Yes, it's actually in VR it can be very intimidating.
Definitely.
So,
So, just starting a little bit to talk about accessibility, because this is a topic that I do talk about in my Let's Play. I
mm,
admit that this was my very first full-blown VR game that I was playing up, like basically on the VR headset. I've just got my VR headset very, very recently, so I started with that. Also, I have a rave in the background of my stream, so I'm sorry if you guys are hearing some weird yelling. This is just ghosts in my house.
yeah.
So, as a person that has had no like experience with VR, this the accessibility options and the comfort options you've added to your game really helped me. What is Fast Travel Games' approach to making sure that people like me, who are completely not used to this, can play
Yeah.
games like yours?
So this is our fourth game, and we've learned a lot since we first released Apex Construct in early 2018. And so basically, VR is, especially for new players, VR can be quite intimidating, and you know, it can almost feel a bit isolated, you know, putting the headset on, etc. But we want as many people as possible to be able to play our game. And some people are, you know, get motion sick from VR. That's a thing that still happens, but you can decrease that a lot with the use of vignettes and different ways of controlling the character, in different ways of handling rotation, etc. We've also got it's quite common to use teleportation as a means of locomotion in VR. For this game, we realized really early on that building a game based on teleportation just wouldn't work. It's a very stealth based game, and teleportation, well, that takes you instantly to a new location, and that doesn't really work well with stealth. So we have a solution that is called a projected avatar, which kind of means you can, if you want to, you can steer your character almost like a third person character, and when you let go of a button, you immediately move there. But AIs and stuff will act; they will see that third person character as if you were there, and it works. It works really well actually for this type of game.
Yes, and I want to really thank you for this option because initially, when I was still adjusting to VR, in the end I
Mm.
was able to record the free movement gameplay. But initially, this option really allowed me to play the game longer without feeling sick at all. It really helped. So thank you so much for adding this option. And
That's good.
yeah, and now let's get to the meat of it, to the very middle of the gameplay. I've seen at first, you know, other people playing this game. I played it myself afterwards, and people who are able to see the gameplay tidbits released today probably have noticed various abilities and various mechanics which go into a rave, because it's not merely a walking simulator. You can do things as
No.
a rave, right? You can
Yes.
become a rave in your game.
Yes, yes. We this game is really intended as a way to introduce also new players who don't know much about Wraith the Oblivion into the world of Wraith and the Shadowlands. We introduce them how to become a Wraith by gradually giving them different Wraith powers. the first thing you unlock is the sharpened senses. So a wraith can hear and see things, just by concentrating. In our game, we've translated this to a kind of since the game takes place in the Barclay Mansion, and it's a free roaming title, you can basically go wherever you want to after a while. We use the sharpened senses to direct the player, so they can basically point their hand and around and lead, and that will lead them to locations of interest. But of course, we have more extravagant stuff, such as the insubstantiality power, which allows you to walk through walls. In this game, this means that we allow you to walk through portals at certain places. We did experiment with letting the player walk through any wall wherever they wanted, which sounds cool, but is not great gameplay. And it basically it wasn't fun.
I'm trying to imagine this, and I'm seeing a no-clip kind of a gameplay when I use no-clip in video games.
Yes,
just
exactly.
moving anywhere.
It's an awesome way to experience and basically get you, but in that sense, but it doesn't really create good, moody horror gameplay. And then we have Wraith Grasp, which lets you lift heavy objects using a telekinesis-like power. And that's used a lot in our puzzle gameplay and stuff like that. And it feels really good, I feel, and you can really feel the weight of objects.
Definitely. I tested all of these abilities in the game, and let's touch a little bit more on the horror aspect of them, and also how they actually work in the game itself. So first, when we're talking about sharpened senses, so how this works in the game is when I was extending my arm, I could see my veins glowing, and the vibration in my hand when I was pointing initially at my shadow. Is our personal connection with our shadow the source of that connection that manifests itself in what we feel, or what's the origin of that design?
So the sharpened senses, the origin of the design was first we VR is this kind of specific in when you play a game on a flat screen on a TV or your computer. It's actually fairly easy to get people to find their way around, etc. But in VR, you have 360-degree, sphere around you. You can go up, down, etc. And it's like real life. And just navigating a virtual space, we want to give the player a really good way of finding their way around. So that's where we started with that. But we wanted to give it, really tie it to the function of being a wraith. Hence the basically and basically get those powers to physically show up in the game. So hence the bubbling, glowing arms, and there's a kind of almost like a heartbeat feeling as you approach your target as well. So
yes,
tactile feedback, and there's a ghostly whisper that rises and changes in volume as well. So we use audio and visuals and tactile feedback for that. It actually also leads you to target, but it's also shows you because there are spectres in the building as
yes,
well.
they are.
And you can't see through walls, etc. But you can use the sharpened senses to track where they are. If are they moving away from you or toward you, etc.
And that's definitely useful.
Yes, it is because you get to hide from those specters a lot, and they are very dangerous. And you can also use it to highlight certain objects in the environment, things you search for, basically. So that's how we translate the wraiths' powers of basically seeing more than mortals would.
Definitely. I really applaud you on the design of this, because as much as in RPG games, or when we play any games with objectives on the PC, we can see the quest markers and, like some kind of a mini map that tells us where to go, which would ultimately really destroy the immersion in the VR if we could see that kind of a mini map somewhere. Instead, you actually use the supernatural abilities, which translate to gesture, and you can feel them in your body as your controller is vibrating vibrate,
Yeah.
and they lead you to a place. So I think that's super smart, and really a good way to make a player feel more supernatural. Which leads me to a second ability. We're actually going to talk about insubstantiality last, but
Mhm.
I think like my most like wow moment at first when I played the game was when I used the rave grasp at the first time, and I could
Mm-hmm.
actually move the objects around me like I was a poltergeist.
Yeah.
So what exactly is rave grasp useful for in the game?
So it is very much used to move heavier objects around, and it is a thing we lifted from the pen and paper rules, and it basically lets you affect the world in a more powerful way. We use it a lot in puzzle solving stuff, but also clearing the path forward. Sometimes the path might be blocked for you. And in combination also with our basic grab interaction mechanic, which is one thing we realized early on when we built Apex Construct, our first game, is that reaching items around you is you often don't want to lean down on the floor to pick stuff up. You want to be able to do it from a distance.
Yes.
So smaller objects such as books or bottles or keys and stuff like that, you can basically fling toward you as well, which lets you affect, well, the world around you from a distance early on in the game. And Wraith Grasp is kind of the second. It's the power up of that. It lets you affect larger things, heavier things, and that gets introduced into more intricate puzzle gameplay.
So I need to ask about
Mm.
one aspect of the rave grasp. So how did you
Mm.
react to see people who played the game so far, influencers, that all of them had very creative ways of using vodka bottles in the game?
Yeah, I think, yeah, it's there's like this the vodka bottles are, I mean, the basic use case is to actually throw it. It crashes, it creates a noise, it distracts your enemies, so you might be able to sneak past. But there's also this general truth that if you put something that is eatable or drinkable in a VR game, people will want to do that.
It's funny because I've done
So
it in my
yeah,
gameplay, and I saw other people playing this game, and everyone had the same reaction. When you saw
yeah,
Spectre in the distance for the first time, it was grab the vodka and just pretend that you drink it.
yeah,
So it's good that we have some shared experiences in there.
yeah.
And now touching on the insubstantiality, and so one aspect of it, which I think is a very interesting part of this whole feature and mechanic, is that when you regularly walk through the mansion and you can use the doors, you can, just like
Yeah.
in real life, very delicately open them and just peek on what's behind them and be able
Yeah,
to kind of like prepare yourself for what's next. Using
yeah,
insubstantiality is very much just diving into the deep water and walking
yeah.
through this complete darkness to see where you will land on the other side. Is there a
Yeah.
possibility to use this mechanic and just walk straight into a spectre?
Yes.
Oh
That could happen. You could use sharpened senses to, check if the specter is on the other side of that wall though first, so you can combine how you use these powers. And it On the other hand, it is also quite a nifty way to escape a specter's presence. You can basically just walk through a wall and potentially the specter will lose track of you. So it's both. I think this feeds right into the risk reward kind of thinking that we have with most wraith powers. Using wraith grasp and throwing big items around creates noise that might attract specters. So there's a risk in using them in the wrong place. And insubstantiality has the same thing. Insubstantiality also hurts your corpus. So by walking through, if you just keep walking through walls, eventually you will, get sucked down into the oblivion. Or
Hmm.
sorry, right. So.
So yeah, corpus, you use this word which may not be known by many of our audience. This is the health for the rave.
Yes,
How does it work in
exactly.
the game, and how do you restore it?
So corpus is there is no regenerating health as such. If you lose health, it is gone. If you lose corpus, it is gone. It can be periodically restored at the save points in the mansion. Not all the time. There's a cooldown between uses for that. There are also you can find photos lying around in the mansion, and by basically consuming them, you can also restore a smaller portion of your corpus.
So, speaking of photos and other memories which are in the mansion, people on Discord, when they saw the very first gameplays from Wraith, they were asking about those mysterious black and white figures which appear and tell parts of the story. So, what are
Yeah.
they, and what function do they play in the game?
So they are called remnants, and they're basically the lowest kind of ghostly presence in the wraith world. They're basically really just repeating memories of things that have happened. So Afterlife starts when you are already dead,
Hmm.
and a large part of the game is about reconstructing the final days and some other things that happened before you died. And these remnants basically play out scenes of things that happened just before you died, or earlier, as you will basically come across some other things in the game. And you can awaken them in different ways by solving puzzles or by taking photos of these discarded memories that can be found in the mansion that are portrayed as kind of like floating Polaroid photographs.
Yes, I did stumble upon that in the game, and
Yeah.
this is all, of course, tied to the fact that Ed Miller, the character that we play in the game, is a photographer, right? And
Yes. Yes.
we don't know much about him at the beginning of the game, but I do assume that this is going to uncover more and more as we play.
Yes, exactly. You basically know when the game starts that he is a photographer. He's been called to the mansion to basically document a séance, and that's when things start going horribly wrong for
Hmm.
him and the other people in the building.
Great! It's a very good start. I love
Yeah,
being in a mansion as a rave, and you know, like when I was playing this game, I kept on repeating to myself that I am dead. I shouldn't be scared. I am a ghost. People should be scared of me, but it doesn't work
yeah.
like that, unfortunately.
No, there's
So
always someone worse than you.
yes,
So
and
yeah,
speaking of those creatures worse than us, there are spectres in the game. Of course, we've been talking about them. So
yeah,
there are, I believe, two of them that we can meet at the beginning of the game,
yes, yeah.
and they are two completely different ones. So
Mm.
of course, without spoiling, what is your approach to designing various spectres as the game progresses? Was there any thought behind trying to make it always fresh, or what's your approach to this?
Yes, the approach was to have each specter is a basically is a unique person
Hmm.
with a unique history. Early on, we actually discarded the idea of having more like generic enemies. The specters in the game are their unique personalities. They have unique behaviors, um, and they have unique histories. And figuring out who they are and what how they ended up in the mansion is also a part of the gameplay. They are all in one way or other tied to Howard Barkley, the movie producer who used to live in the Barkley mansion before he died. So that's also they tie in really well, I think, to our storytelling, but but basically by giving them a unique personality and a unique history, that means they also feel more unique when you encounter them in the game.
Definitely, and that's of course even more scary because you have to approach them all in a different way, and you never know what's going to come next. So thank you for making us all really, really scared with this, but in a very fun psychological way as well, I think. So speaking of this, the scares and this last big aspect of the demo gameplay that we were able to see,
Mm,
there is a pretty big section at the end of this demo which consists of stealth and trying
yes.
to hide from the spectre who is roaming around, walking around, and trying to
Mm,
find us. How does stealth in VR exactly work? Do we have to be stealthy in real life? Do we have to crouch?
yes.
Yes.
So, yes, you have to crouch, but in accordance with basically how we think about, we want as many people as possible to play the game. We also have actually added a crouch button for those people who don't want to crawl on the floor. It is all. I actually recommend, if you can and want to, crouching and crawling on the floor can be quite immersive. Uh, what happens is basically if you crouch behind a like a couch or something like that, or a pedestal or whatever in the game, this is VR, right? So you know you actually hide behind objects of the appropriate scale and position, etc. So that's a really important thing. So yes, you have to hide. You have to. You know, there's a cupboards you can run into and slam the door behind you, or you can close doors behind you and hope that the specters don't hear you and open them and come after you and stuff like that. So it is a physical thing, and but it's I think one of the coolest things with VR, which was my first big aha moment when I started working, or even before I started working with VR, is that if you you are there. You can hide behind something. You can look around it. You can walk around objects in the game in a way that is, and that to me is just that feeling of being there is where we are. Is just it's just way better to do that.
Definitely. Yeah, and of course, I want to note here that for our viewers who are wondering, the game has accessibility features for people who want to play in a seated position as well. So
Yeah,
you can fully turn this on, and you don't have to walk, don't have to move in real life in order to operate this game in VR. But
no,
there's an option to choose, which is
yes,
great.
yeah,
Yeah. So
exactly.
the last question, which I want to ask you, is now that we have seen some of that gameplay and the very first impressions from it, from influencers and press, do you remember any moments when you showed this game for the first time to either people in the studio or maybe some guests, and some particular moments that made you feel that, hey, we actually did something really good in here?
Uh, I actually it's we had it's actually when we hit one of our milestones and basically and had new people playing the game. And when you build a horror game, you're always scared when you experience a scenario for the first time, and then you play it like 100 times. so,
Yes,
so you lose that sense. You forget how it was to experience something the first time. And I think the I think when we had those first reactions of people being actually really scared, but really scared, but also liking it. I
yes,
think
definitely.
I think that's the thing. It's a balance horror, making horror games, and some people, me included, love to be scared. I mean, I love being scared by horror games and movies and whatever, but there's a balance. It's still entertainment, and I think that when we first got those first, people, they got really scared, but they loved it. I felt that was okay. I know we're onto something.
That's
Uh,
great. Yeah, absolutely. I've seen that you guys inspired yourself with games like Alien Isolation. And as a big fan of horror games, I feel like um, I don't feel like many games scare me anymore, but playing this game in VR is definitely a brand new experience, and it does scare me.
Yeah,
So it's very hard to feel differently when you are so immersed in the VR experience. So
it is.
yeah, thank you so much for creating this game so far, and for what we've seen so far is really great, and I cannot wait for the broader community to have access to this. So when we can expect something new from you guys, and where we should tune in order to follow the news about Afterlife.
So the game will be released on April 22nd on Oculus platforms first, and then Steam May 25th, and a little bit later PlayStation in 2021. And I think the best place to keep up with our news is to maybe follow Wraith the Oblivion or Wraith Afterlife on Twitter. We're on Facebook and Instagram as well, and I think that's probably the best place to follow on. And of course, we will have more stuff to show as we approach our launch.
I am crossing my fingers for this last
Yeah,
round towards the finish line.
yeah.
Congratulations on getting this far, and I cannot wait to play the full game.
Thank you. I'm really looking forward to seeing you.
Thank you so much, Eric. See you later and have a good night. Bye.
Yeah, you too. Bye.
So, guys, that was Eric from the team. If you hear some spectres in the background, this is a very haunted house. I hope that you understand. I really hope that you enjoyed this interview, especially as we are getting much and much closer to the release of Rave the Oblivion Afterlife. I'm going to right now permit fast travel games on our chat on Twitch so they can post the links. And sorry, you will be able to post the links right now. And I will, of course, post all the pictures, all the links below our YouTube video as soon as it's going to go live on YouTube. So if you're watching this, it's pre-recorded, then you will be able to see everything down below. And now, let me get to the World of Darkness brand portion of this news. So we have some news for you guys. We have been preparing some things to share with the community. As you know, we are very much deep in development currently for Werewolf the Apocalypse 5th edition and the Sabbat source book. I think it's, yeah, source book is probably the better name for it, but we are, of course, developing V5 Sabbat and Werewolf currently, and in the process of development, we are, of course, sometimes having the breaks to write something, just like we have written the development blog on our website. This is the very first one was written by Justin Akili, who is our creative lead, and he has shared the background on how we approach defining and designing clans for Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition. You were able to see the very first work that was, I feel like in general all the 5th edition clans follow these rules, but we define them even more as we approach Vampire the Masquerade Companion release for Salubri, Ravnos, and Tsimitsi, introduction into the 5th edition. So there was a lot of questions about how exactly you approached developing these new clans into the 5th edition from the old clans, which we remember from the past editions. What kind of aspects of these old clans were important to you in order to take it to this 5th edition level? And I feel like this development diary, you can read it on our website, worldofdarkness.com, but I will give you a very short recap of what it envelops. It very much explains what is our approach to the creation of not only the TTRPG material, because ultimately clans are not only meant to be used in the TTRPGs, but they are meant to be used in a transmedia way. So that means video games, maybe TV shows one day, hopefully. Everyone hopes for that. Board games, VR experiences, and actual plays, and way many more ways in which Vampire the Masquerade can be used. So when we design things such as clans, when we define things like the lore, backgrounds, factions, the basic functions of vampires, how they act around the world, what kind of aspects like affect them, such as resonance or hunger, then we think not only about the usage in the TTRPG, they have to of course be fun to play at the table, but also about how will they be used in the future in various products, and to make sure that this experience is going to be coherent no matter where you go. And that's why Justin touches very deeply on the topic of using verbs. And verbs is something that we very much focus on when we are thinking about clans' identities. The general rule is that in order to understand the clan and what background, what exactly is Salubri or what exactly is Tremere, you do not have to know any additional lore. You do not really have to read some book detailing Kindred history. You understand the basic concepts by what these vampires do. You cannot, of course, play, for example, a Salubri character that is very much focused on this vendetta against Tremere. If you know the background lore, you can totally do that in your gameplay, but without knowing this lore, you can still tap into what Salubri are all about and roleplay at the table, or play as a Salubri in a video game, or understand Salubri on the screen. So this, I think, like this is a very, very big base of how clans are interpreted in V5, which I find it very universal in gameplay. And as I roleplay myself, I find it very interesting to interpret it this way and try to play with the verbs. A lot of people were asking us after we published this development blog about the verbs for all of the clans. Can we share them in the future? So we are, of course, exploring the options on how to do it in the best way right now, because we would love to share with you more materials to inspire you in your role-playing adventures and in your creation. So yeah, let me just very quickly check out the chat and some questions. Some people are asking about the confirmation of a second Vampire the Masquerade source book. We did confirm that there is also work on being done on Second Inquisition. So these two V5 products right now are announced and in works. Of course, we have a lot more that we are cooking behind the scenes, but for those that we have announced, that's Sabbat and the Second Inquisition. These are being worked on right now. So yeah, all of the disciplines so far in V5, the top level is level 5. And of course, if you are willing to, there's like particular discipline power for some elder vampire that you want to adapt from the older editions, you're able to do it in the homebrews. But V5 is very much about not really playing as these extremely unstoppable creatures, godlike creatures that are able to destroy the world Thanos way with a snap of a finger. It's way more of a personal vampire story. I feel like, of course, you can still play a super frightening and powerful elder with the powers at the table. There's a lot of crazy powers, especially if you add all of the core books and source books so far. Codes of the Blood Gods has some really insane powers that you may develop in your gameplay, but V5 is definitely way more about being able to somehow relate to the character you play. And I've heard a lot of people saying that after doing this verb-based design, so after trying to approach the design of the clans without this strong connection that you need to know this lore, you need to read this whole book in order to understand what Tzimisce or Ravnos are all about, it actually opened the way for many more players into playing them. I've got, like, just today, people were writing that they just got into role-playing Tzimisce or Ravnos, or that they haven't understood La Sombra really before, and they didn't get exactly how they can be different than Ventrue and different in gameplay, but the verb-based approach, or the approach that is very much based on what you do instead of who your elders are, is more understandable and approachable for people, which is, of course, still within these rules and within these brackets. You can play any character you want. You can adapt your older characters into this system, and you can also try to do something brand new, or something even, of course, going against the whole stereotype. We're also talking about that in the dev blog, so if you're wondering more and want to get some inspiration into how you create your characters, I feel like this dev blog is really useful. And I hope that this very first kind of look behind the scenes on how we approach designing concepts such as clans is interesting for you, because we plan more of these. We definitely want to do more development blocks entailing various things that we're working on. And if you liked the dev blog, let us know, and we are going to cook more of these, because we are, very heavy at work, and we wonder if this is interesting for people, if this is something that you want to hear about. This particular whiteboard actually happened one of the rare times when I was in the office. We don't spend much time in the office these days, of course, because of the pandemic, but Justin was collecting various verbs and various ideas. This board changed multiple times. I don't think even if that's the last iteration of it. During the development of Salubri, we had many ideas, and we clashed basically the ideas of what people usually do when they play Salubri. And I was even going around and asking, indirectly, of course, not suggesting that this is anything that we're planning to do, because Companion back then was still under wraps, and so we haven't told about its developments to people. So I was asking around, how do you guys play Salubri in your campaigns? What do you do with them? So we get a lot of very useful feedback, which was later on used to develop what you can see in the companion. So yeah, that is the dev blog. You can read it on our website. And now I'm going to move on to another topic, something we teased this week on our social media, and tell you what the hell is up with World of Darkness stories and what World of Darkness stories are. So this is my little pet project. I am super happy that we're doing this, and I cannot wait to share more with you guys about this. But World of Darkness stories came from the general inspiration of, when you read World of Darkness books, source books, or when you read, let's say, Cult of the Blood Gods, you read Chicago by Night, sometimes you read those little tiny stories, tidbits in there, the fiction parts of the books. And you, as a Vampire the Masquerade fan, as someone who has been very much deep into the lore and deep into this whole thing, you sometimes find things that you recognize, and you sometimes have this very good feeling in your heart that, hey, this talks about Serena from Redemption. Hey, this is a concept that I actually explored in my roleplay. This is so interesting. And not only you feel that, but sometimes you have a feeling like, hey, the place that they're describing, I recognize this from real life. I've been there. I've heard about this. So there's a lot of relatability in reading these stories, but also a lot of fun for people who want to expand their mindset on World of Darkness. And for many people, this is the very first step. When they read those fiction stories, they're able to finally imagine how this can work in the stories. How Victoria Ash describing the various ways that she thinks of clans as lovers in Camarilla source book. This portrays people how romance can work in Vampire the Masquerade. And there are so many other little ways that the fiction tidbits, the micro-narratives, can paint World of Darkness in various ways. And I wanted to explore this topic deeper, and that's how World of Darkness Stories project began. This is going to be a free, forever expanding collection of micro stories, which are going to be shared through a World of Darkness Instagram and Facebook World of Darkness Stories. You can follow it on both. And they're going to be written by various writers and show World of Darkness from different personal perspectives of the in-game characters. So all of these stories are going to be told from the perspective of inhabitants of World of Darkness. Vampires, werewolves, maybe in the future some other creatures, of course, humans, ghouls, Second Inquisition, hunters. There's a lot of different inhabitants in the World of Darkness. They live in various places. They live all around the world, and their opinions on things may be very subjective, but they are painting their own story. So the main inspiration behind World of Darkness stories was for me Humans of New York. Not sure if you know this project. It's pretty famous on Instagram and Facebook. It even has books, but basically it's a collection of stories of people living in New York, and they range from very short ones to very big ones, sad ones, happy ones, funny ones, and there's a lot of things that the author is exploring just by interviewing random people. So now imagine this, but in the fictional world. Imagine someone being able to interview vampires, interview werewolves, interview people who had supernatural occurrences in their lives, but they don't really fully know yet what they have met. They have met a Toreador in the club, but they are not sure if it's a Toreador. They have no idea what Toreadors are, but they have an experience from that and they are sharing it. So this is basically what World of Darkness stories are going to be all about. We are going to very much plan to expand it globally and write about various places, some places which were very underrepresented in World of Darkness so far. So we are reaching out to various writers who have personal experience and cultural experience with these places as well. I am not going to reveal first just yet what are going to be our first guest writers, but the very first stories which you may expect are going to be somewhere in Asia. So that's what I can tease so far. The exact location to be announced. But we are going to post the stories regularly. There's going to be stories from the World of Darkness brand team, from guest writers, and in the future, maybe also from the community. We really want to work with you guys to see what you want to see from that. What kind of a World of Darkness do you want us to show you through these stories? So we want to we want to share more of that. And of course, this is the alternate reality narration. There's going to be stories which are going to be connected with each other. And some of them may be connected to the products or characters from various different World of Darkness products or actual plays or anything else that you really like explore for World of Darkness. And I'm also thinking about in the future introducing the interactive aspects into that and trying to solve some investigations yourself through these stories. As for now, we're going to launch this project, start rolling out the stories which we already have, and see what you guys are going to think about them. I cannot wait to share more of that, mostly because it's going to expand the whole World of Darkness in the world and the lore and the possible characters you can use infinitely, really. We are going to roll out as many stories as we can, and it's going to be updated regularly. Videos of actors reading some of the stories looking at you, LA by Night crew. Oh my god, you stole my idea. My OCD heart really wants those compiled into a book at some point. I mean, that would be wonderful, of course. But we are launching this project. We really don't know where this is going to lead us. If that's the book one day, with some really cool visual aspect of it, I would be super happy. But this is the beginning of the road. We'll see what will find us ahead. So yeah, of course, when we are going to release our future IP elements and things that are going to build up World of Darkness. So the Sabbath book, Second Inquisition book, and in the future Werewolf and other core books, this is going to be reflected in World of Darkness stories. You will be able to explore the stories from these books, told from different perspectives about the things that we're going to introduce. So this is going to be an additional free layer of stories and inspirations that will fulfill your experience. So expect connections, expect a lot of connections, expect consequences of people's actions, because World of Darkness is ultimately a story about secrets and consequences. And we are definitely exploring these topics in the stories. I hope that you will like this. Will this be available outside of Facebook and Instagram? As for now, we're launching it this way because that's where a lot of our fan base is, and it's easy for people to follow. And the stories are too long to share on Twitter, so some of them are going to be way longer than the Twitter limit. So these are the social media which we are planning to reach out to so far, but we are definitely planning to expand this in the future. So maybe there's going to be a place on the WOD website for this. I cannot promise you that right now, but this is the launch, and if people will want to see these stories in majority elsewhere, we will explore the possibilities. So yeah. Let me check out if there are any more questions. If these going to be translated? Definitely not initially. There's a lot of text going into these, and I feel like maybe in the future we could think about something like this, but definitely at the beginning it's going to be available in English. So that's what we're going to start with. But as they're going to be available in text form, I hope it's going to be accessible to translate. And of course, we are looking into possible community inputs. When we're going to share any of these stories on either Insta, Facebook, or link to it on Twitter, then I really ask you guys to share your opinions in the comments about the stories themselves. How would you see this growing in the future? What is your opinion on that, and what you want from the stories? We want to hear your feedback on this. So the very first story, I feel like 2 stories are already out there. I think the second one might have been sent already. So you can explore it on the Instagram so far and let us know what you think. We're going to also focus next week, because it's an International Women's Day. We're going to focus it on the female-oriented stories. So from the female characters' perspective, a lot of the different female characters inhabiting World of Darkness and telling stories about it from their perspective. So that's our plan for next week. And of course, we're going to have way more events and focus points in the future. So yeah, okay, so that's World of Darkness stories. If you have any questions about it, hit me up on Discord, and I hope you will get a better grasp on it as we unload the stories to the public. And as for now, I am going to end the news part of the show and show you the gameplay for Wraith, so you'll be able to see the very beginning of the game. This is the pre-recorded one, so I won't be answering your questions anymore, unfortunately, but please hit me up on Discord or in chat, because I will be there. And for those of you guys who are watching this on YouTube, there will be a link to the gameplay down below. So yeah, I hope you will enjoy me being very scared, because now it's time to see me being scared. See you later, and don't get lost in the night.